Guide, we beseech thee, Almighty God, members of the Senate, that they may wisely deliberate for the good of this country and for the glory of thy holy name. Will you please join me in the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pray be seated.
Item number 3, oath of allegiance or affirmation of a new senator. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the Senate held at the Grenada Trade Center on Wednesday, the 24th of January, 2018, be taken as read.
Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the meeting of the Senate held on the 24th, Wednesday, the 24th of January, 2018, be taken as read. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those to the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the minutes of the proceedings of a sitting of the Senate held at the Grenada Trade Center on Wednesday, the 24th of January, 2018, be confirmed.
Just before we move to confirmation, this is just to remind the members that this minutes, as you recall from the last sitting, we had some corrections that was made and a little issue concerning whether we should accept in the minutes as it was there because of Senator Greenwich Roberts at the time had questioned. The clerk have informed that based on the rules, the Hansard has to be taken as is, as what has been said. So this is why this minutes was deferred and we now confirm. Okay? Just for clarity. Honorable members, the question is that the minutes of the meeting of the Senate held on the Wednesday, the 24th of January, 2018 be confirmed. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of the sitting of the Senate held at the Parliament Chamber, Mount Weldale, St. George's, on Tuesday, the 24th of July, 2018, be taken as read.
Honourable members, the question is that the minutes of the meeting of the Senate held on Tuesday, the 24th of July, 2018, be taken as read. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the minutes of the proceedings of the sitting of the Senate held at the Parliament Chamber at Mount Weldale, St. George's, on Tuesday, the 24th of July, 2018, be confirmed.
Honourable members, the question is that the minutes of the meeting of the Senate held on Tuesday, the 24th of July, 2018, be confirmed. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Item number 5, messages from the Governor General. Item number 6, announcement by Mr. Vice President.
Honorable members, good morning again. And I just want to say I hope you take it easy on the Deputy President this morning, since first sitting fully in the chair. I have a few announcements. First of all, we have an excuse from Senator Ron Redhead that he would not be making the sitting today. And we also have from Senator Glenys Roberts that she has indicated that she will be arriving late to this morning's session. Because we don't have, our rules have not been upgraded as yet, I am informed that I have to always say at this sitting that permission is given to honorable members to use their various gadgets, electronic gadgets, because you know our rules don't yet accommodate it. So until we change those rules, then we have to announce that permission is given from the chair. I also have an apology from the President. As you know, the President is out of state. That's why I have this exercise to be sitting here. But so he sends his apology for missing this important session because we're going to be debating the CCJ bill, something that I know he's passionate about as well. We also will be having, I suspect, I don't know if things have changed, the clerk has informed that we will be having a visit from one of our schools, SAS in particular, who will be coming to observe our proceedings this morning. And the indication is that, of course, I have to give them permission to take some notes. So I'm saying it for the minutes in case they come later, it's already approved. And to also say to our honorable members, please be on your best behavior. We have the young ones watching us. Thank you. That is all from the chair.
Item number 7, ministerial statements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Chair, and good morning to you and good morning to the rest of the colleagues. Mr. Deputy Chair, I'm pleased to present to this honorable House this morning the report for the ministries which I am responsible for. But I want to start on a sad note, in as much as NADMA is mourning the loss of its communication director, one who would have served the agency for the last 15 years with distinction, Mr. Jerry Lewis. Sadly, we've lost him last Wednesday, and come Monday the 17th, we'll be laid to rest in the St. George Center Cemetery. It has been a hard moment for us as an agency, having your communication officer passing at this point in time within the midst of the Atlantic hurricane season. And we all know.
Just let me interject, please, for a second. Just to say that I also should have said this very earlier before we started, but I want us to stand to observe a moment of silence for the passing of Bishop Sidney Charles, who recently passed on. So if the members will join me in standing to observe a moment of silence for the passing, I think it is adequate that we do this at this level, based on his contribution over the years to our community. Thank you. Senator, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair. And as I said, in the midst of the Atlantic hurricane season, to have lost your communication director, it means a lot. And we are at the agency making all ends, making do with what we have and with the additional staff that we do expect to ensure that we have agency fully prepared to respond in the event. And to would like to extend our condolences to the diocese on the passing of Bishop Sidney Charles. I remember him from a little boy growing up. He was this man we remember as bishop, and all these years he was a pillar of strength for a lot of us, I do believe. Mr. Chair, I want to also announce to this honorable House that come the 20th of this month, Thursday, the 28th of September, we will be seeing St. Patrick become the first parish within Grenada certified as tsunami ready. What is this? We've been talking about this for the last 9 months as it relates to ensuring that we develop capacity, we develop within our communities, persons having knowledge as to the hazards that we are exposed to. So come the 18th of September, we have a verification team coming in on the island to ensure that the prerequisite of the project were met. These verification pillars will include checking of all the signs and positions, maps, and interviewing community members to determine their knowledge on the projects and its existence. The project is a collaborative initiative between NADMA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and UNESCO. Taking into account the proximity of the northern parish to Kikamjeni, the Kikamjeni volcano, St. Patrick was chosen to pilot the project with a plan to later replicate the project throughout the tri-island state. The project started with workshops and officials being made aware and become knowledgeable as to what this is about. And I want to say from the experience on the ground, the people of St. Patrick's, they are excited about it. I remember posting some of the signage that was posted up. There was some mix-up with the signage, and the community came out very strongly and said, no, there are some issues as it relates to the pointing of the arrows where people should run from in the event. There should be a warning. It speaks to community acceptance and buy-in into the project. We do believe, as we roll out this project this Thursday, the ceremony will be held in the schoolyard of the Anglican Primary School in St. Patrick's, and we invite in the whole of St. Patrick's and the whole of Grenada to be there to support us and support the work and the initiative within St. Patrick as it relates to Tsunami Ready. Mr. Deputy President, on November the 30th, a community meeting will be held to ensure that persons fully understand what would have transpired. And when I say this, I put it this way. You want to ensure that the residents are fully involved with this unveiling. And you will do constant updating of the information, but most importantly, the simulations that you will carry out to ensure that they know what to do in the event they should hear a siren. As you know, just about 3 weeks ago, we had this massive shake in the country. Massive earthquake, 9.3 on the Richter scale. Sorry, 7.3 on the Richter scale. And it brought to the fore the importance of having all the mechanism in place to provide warning and one central alerting mechanism so that persons, if be the siren or bells, when they hear it, the blast, they know exactly what to do. So we had this massive shake, and within the region, we do not have such a warning system. What this say to us? With tsunami ready certification for St. Patrick, we need now to ensure that we go a little further and to have a national alerting protocol so that the entire country will be made aware if there is an approaching tsunami, what they need to do. And that is the charge that we have at this point in time, to ensure that we do the work within the schools and the churches, families, throughout the communities, so our nation will know. If you say you hear, you feel, or you see, run. What is that? You might just hear or feel the rumbling. You might see the sea receding. Don't wait to ask or tell yourself you could go and hold some fish. Run to higher ground. That is where we want to bring our people to know that in this period of climate change and all that is happening, we need to become more aware as to what is happening. As I've said in the opening, that this is the Atlantic hurricane season. And so far, Mr. President, as we have seen, September is a very busy month in terms of cyclonic events. We are happy as a nation that it was Hurricane Isaac, tropical storm, Isaac depression now, has virtually evaded Dominica as it was moving directly, likely to impact Dominica. But Dominica was spared, and I want to say collectively, the region's prayers would have been answered. But there are a number of other storms within the Atlantic basin. But it continued to say to us what we as a people need to do. At this point in time, we need to ensure that our surroundings are clear of debris, or hanging debris that could become a missile should there be heavy winds. Our waterways should be cleared. Our drains and the likes should be free of objects. But create a passage for water to run smoothly. Because in this period, with the forecast that was given, having 14 to 17 named storms, of 7 could become hurricanes. And between 3 to 4 major hurricanes, it only takes one, Mr. Deputy President, to give you a bad season. So what is important for us now is to ensure that we continue the education process, our people continue to take the warning seriously, and do what is required of us. This morning I was listening to the news that was coming out from Charlotte. Florence is doing quite a lot over there. And over 216,000 residents had to be evacuated from their homes, the place of comfort. Some people were stubborn and didn't want to go. But I want to say to the nation, if there's an issue, a bulletin out that persons in low-lying areas so prone to flooding to take the necessary precaution, we ask you to move. Move to higher ground. But I know sometimes we feel there are no place safer than our homes. But what we fail to realize, like they're experiencing right now in Charlotte, if you fail to move when you're asked to move, and then you get engulfed in the emergency, our first responders are not supermen and superwomen. Don't expect them that they will just come through the danger and to release you. They have to wait. So if you choose to wait it out in the hazardous zone, it means therefore, Mr. Deputy President, you have to wait it out as we would have to wait it out before we could send in responders. So it is very important that we take all the precaution that is given at this point in time to save lives and to save property. Because as you know, this is all that we have. What we are able to do, we should do it. And if it just means to take a warning or pay heed to the notices that has been given, go ahead with it. Take it. The other point that I want to raise, Mr. Deputy President, I look at the proliferation of information on social media as it relates to managing disasters and getting qualified information. And we constantly speak of it, that the Hurricane Center and NOAA might produce information that is mass communication for the entire region, the Americas. But as it relates to, I just need 1 minute to round up.
That's fine, Senator Garvey. I think my president have established that protocol. So
Thank you very much.
please feel free.
So in as much as we have that, and the bell kind of threw me off, but the point is, all that I'm asking, social media give you information they take it from NOAA, mass communication, but none is specific to your local area. So the authorities have to take this information, contextualize it to your specific zones. So in their job to contextualize information, like our Met office, it will take more time than when you see it posted on NOAA's website. But people will take it and move it around and ask, where is NADMA or where is the Met? But they have to do their jobs properly. Run it through the models. It may take a half an hour longer, but run it through the models so when they present information to you, this is specific to Grenada, Carrico, and Petite Martinique. Let us wait on the authorities. But the point is, NOAA will say, or the Hurricane Center will say to you, as it relates to your local market, you need to contact your local Met authorities, because they know what they give you in mass communication may not be specific to your area. So I just want to say to the nation, let's continue to use social media wisely. There are those who see what NOAA posts and create their own forecast, and to spell gloom and doom and to frighten the entire nation. I'd like to ask those persons to desist from such, because you create this sort of panic that we don't want. We really don't want it. Allow the professional people to do their job and to provide information that is designed to save lives and help you to make the wise decision as it relates to saving lives and saving property. Mr. President, I want to thank you.
Nolan Cox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I take this opportunity to give a report on the stewardship of the Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts, and also a little bit on tourism. Mr. Deputy President, I want to first start with our 2018 Spice Mass Carnival, to say that I believe we had one of the biggest festivals ever in the history of Grenada's Carnival. And I want to owe that success to the entire nation and all stakeholders who worked diligently to ensure that Spice Mass 2018 came off successful. But most notably, for some of the challenges that we had leading up to the hosting of Spice Mass 2018, we had flooding. I really want to recognize all stakeholders, staff and management of Spice Mass, who worked together to change schedules to ensure that all the events took place on Carnival Weekend. I think that was a remarkable collaborative effort, and we must recognize that at this honorable place. Also, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, the Royal Grenada Police Force continues to be outstanding in their work, and we must recognize them for keeping peace and safety for not just for our nationals, but also for visiting patrons here in Grenada for the 2018 Carnival. Mr. Deputy President, as we move forward to build on what we have achieved, we're endeavoring to have continuous consultations with all our stakeholders We also want to congratulate all our winners. We know that persons would have invested significantly to participate in the various events, and we must congratulate them on their effort. Some of our artists are overseas applying their skills, and we wish them all the best as they take Grenada, Carnival, and Spice Mass worldwide. Mr. Deputy President, I want to take this opportunity to speak about Festival of the Arts. This is an important cultural activity that has not happened in the past 9 years for a number of reasons. It didn't, and we are endeavoring to host Festival of the Arts in 2018, commencing this October, starting on the 1st of October, where we have registration for participants. This Festival of the Arts particularly targets schools. It provides an avenue for young persons to display talent, the skills, acting, dancing, theater, whatever the case may be. And we have structures in place for preparing them for training and for judging. This, Mr. Deputy President, we believe is a very important initiative, and maybe it should not have been discontinued, but nonetheless, it's back on the schedule, and we are going to do everything through the Ministry of Culture to ensure that it remains. If it means us getting some extra support from the corporate sector to ensure that it continues to thrive and expand. But all the feedback from this initiative is very positive. So we are happy that the Ministry of Culture is putting back this activity. And I know that the schools in particular are very excited about this. Persons are preparing. And so the only challenge that we have in terms of persons, the interest, we don't know what the demand will be like and whether or not we'll be able to handle that increase in participation. So that is something that we'll have to deal with going forward. But registration commences from the 1st to the 19th of October, and then we have preliminaries on the 26th of October to the 9th of November. And then we have semifinals on the 26th, from the 26th to the 30th of November, and the finals on the 6th of December. So for the next couple of weeks, we will be having an array of display of Grenadian talent throughout the Tri-Island state, including Carriacou and Petit-Martinique. So, Mr. President, I also want to congratulate the staff of the Ministry of Culture for working hard to ensure that we get this important developmental cultural activity back up and running. Mr. Deputy President, I just want to take this opportunity to recognize the achievements of our sporting personnel out there. They have been working hard representing Grenada, in some cases with limited resources. And we at the Ministry of Sports continue to work to see how we can improve that. We have before us a draft sports policy that we are working on, and we are endeavoring to finalize that with consultation from all parties. I just want to congratulate them on the efforts. However, Mr. Deputy President, we recognize that we have a lot more to do in terms of investing in our sporting personnel, and we will continue to do that as much as we can. Mr. Deputy President, international cricket. It's been quite a while since 2014 that we had international cricket in Grenada. I'm happy to report to this Honorable House that come next year, February 25th and 27th, Grenada will receive 2 one-day international games against England right here in Grenada. We anticipate that this will be a very lucrative week for Grenada in terms of economic activity. We know that England travels very heavy, and we are happy that they have chosen Grenada as a choice one of the choice on the schedule. We are expecting both teams to be in Grenada by the 23rd of February and may leave on the 28th thereabout. So we have a few days for them to experience Grenada in its best. Also, I can confirm, Mr. Deputy President, rooms for the players have already been booked. I received confirmation yesterday that all the rooms have already been booked for players, so the hotels are basically doing well. So persons can start preparing in terms of services, food providers, everybody, taxi personnel can start preparing for this big sporting event. We are working towards preparing a local organizing committee. Hopefully by Tuesday, Wednesday, that should be finalized. We are consulting with the Greater Cricket Association, our strategic partner in this regard. We are consulting with the Cricket West Indies, and they were here earlier on this week. And we had a representation from the manager of the West Indies senior men's team. We had our Ambassador General Ghana manager, that is our Royal Lewis, our Grenadian own Royal Lewis. And we had the communications and commercial and marketing person, Mr. Dominic Wan, who are here to officially announce Grenada's receipt of this important cricket schedule. So, Mr. Deputy President, we continue to work towards ensuring that we have a successful event come 2019. The work starts now, and so we are working diligently to bring success. And as time goes on, I will continue to inform this Honorable House as we progress with this important event. Mr. Deputy President, I move to youth. The Ministry of Youth Development, we have just recommenced Project Reach at Her Majesty's prisons. That is a very important project, Mr. Deputy President, because you know we have a number of young persons who have come in crosshairs with the law, and they're at Her Majesty's prisons. And we believe that we, as the Ministry of Youth Development, have a critical responsibility to help them rehabilitate, to build themselves better, to come back as they come back in society, to come back more solid. And we have 32 inmates who are participating in this Project Reach currently. And some of the areas in which they will be engaged in terms of development, in terms of literacy, they will be doing also debates, they'll be taking part in sporting activities, there'll also be vocational training at CVQ level 2, Mr. Deputy President, and also agriculture is a big area for them and also for Grenada, and they'll be involved in crop and livestock production activities there. So, Mr. Deputy President, this is something that we want to inform this Honorable House where we are in terms of Project Reach. We have a number of other project initiatives, Empower and others, which will inform the Honorable House as we move forward. Mr. Deputy President, we are planning a student symposium on the 19th, Wednesday the 19th of September at the TAMCC. This student symposium is themed Gifted to Succeed. The purpose of this symposium is to engage new students, new entrants, new students into TAMCC, to motivate them and to give them guidance and to give them that necessary support as they approach tertiary level education. As we know, it can be challenging. There are a number of issues when you're moving from secondary to tertiary. Sometimes they get a little difficult, and even the environment. So we, from the Ministry of Youth Development, see this as a critical initiative to engage them, to give that necessary support and guidance through this symposium. Finally, Mr. Deputy President, the Imani program, we continue to work diligently to ensure that this program succeeds. We know that we have a number of challenges, but that has not deterred us in any way. We continue to tweak and make improvements as we go along. Within the past 3 months, 54 Imani trainees has transitioned into permanent employment. We see this as a small success as we move forward with the program, Mr. Deputy President. As we continue to endeavor to move forward with the transition period, we are engaging our businesses for them to share costs in terms of the stipend for our trainees, and we are having ongoing discussions. We are hoping to commence that from the end of September and starting the 1st of October, a 50% sharing, cost sharing in terms of the stipend. Mr. Deputy President, the Imani program is a critical program for our students, for our young people. And sometimes if we try to encourage persons to spend some time to understand the impact that this program has and how it tends to move. With every project, there are going to be challenges. Projects are dynamic, and sometimes things evolve and that you didn't foresee. And some of those things had evolved with the Imani program. But we are confident that its presence and its existence has bear significant benefits. And so some of the negatives, we believe that we can curb those and minimize those as we move forward. And as such, we are hoping between now and the end of the year to commence another batch, a new batch of Imani trainees. Once we get all the the necessary structures in place. We are working hard towards achieving that. So more information will come to this Honorable House on this important program. Mr. Deputy President, this is all that I have to report at this point in time. Thank you very much. Senator Steele.
Thank you, Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I wish to give an update on the ministry, which I'm substantively responsible for, but focusing mainly on the areas of climate resilience and the environment, and I'll speak on a particular matter related to the Ministry of Education. So the Ministry of the Environment, after the passing of the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Act at our last sitting, the ban on the importation of styrofoam took effect from the 1st of September. Mr. Deputy President, this is a phased ban, starting with the importation of specific styrofoam products, including food containers, plates, cups, and egg cartons, and as alternatives for other styrofoam-based products become readily available, will be added to this list. But the plan is that for the complete ban of those items currently identified, the complete ban will come into effect from the 1st of April 2019. So all of those products would be phased out of Grenada. And this will be followed by single-use handled shopping bags, with the importation ban coming into effect 1st of February 2019, with the complete banning of these items the 1st of February 2020. And all of these dates have been agreed in consultation with stakeholders. We are balancing our aggressive agenda to eliminate plastics, styrofoam, other pollutants that are a scourge on our environment, but balancing that with the economic needs and the positions of our stakeholders, so to find that right balance. The final area, the third order, that again is due to come into effect on the 1st of February 2019, are other single-use plastics, such as cutlery, food containers, plates, glasses, and straws. We are currently in discussions with stakeholders, looking at the dates, looking at the approaches to how we're phasing that in, and if there are any modifications that need to be made, then they would be brought, they'll be brought forward. But this, Mr. Deputy President, is Grenada's, the role that Grenada is playing in this global battle against plastics pollution. However, replacing non-biodegradable items with biodegradable and compostable items doesn't solve our litter problem. We still have that. So we are taking advantage of this opportunity with the public awareness, with this ban coming into effect, to implement the Litter Abatement Act, which was passed since 2015. So this will involve the establishment of litter prevention wardens, the enforcement of fines both on individuals and on businesses, with a significant public education program. And the Ministry of Environment is working very closely with the Royal Grenada Police Force in the implementation of this act. And through our discussions with the RGPF, we've identified other areas of antisocial behavior that we want to curb. And one of those focus areas will be the bus terminus in the town of St. George's. And some of the discussions we've been having with the RGPF is strengthening the police presence there, upgrading the status of the current police presence, which is just a police post, to a full police station. Working with Grenada Ports Authority for the installation of CCTV surveillance equipment, again as a deterrent and improving the response of the police. We'll also be looking at upgrading the washroom facilities, the toilet facilities there, and enforcing the laws with regard to public urination and, again, other antisocial behavior. We'll be establishing a working committee that will oversee the litter and the initiatives at the bus terminus. That working committee will be led by the Ministry of the Environment and the Royal Grenada Police Force, together with Solid Waste, the private sector, legal affairs, NGOs, and the media. Mr. Deputy President, I'll now move on to the completion of a very successful mission a couple of weeks ago with New York University. The project is the Climate Resilient City Project, which has the very ambitious task of establishing St. George's as the first climate resilient city within the region. And some specific interventions have been identified to achieve this, to address some specific vulnerable areas in the St. George's area, including the carénage, the southern corridor between St. George's and the airport itself. St. George's University, an important economic engine for us, looking at sewage treatment plants for the south, the urban development plan for the town of St. George, identifying those vulnerable areas, vulnerable communities, and how to address those, looking at congestion, traffic congestion in town and the surrounding areas. And then outside of that, there is an add-on which is looking at the Grenville Coastal Road, not in St. George's, but clearly a very vulnerable area and a very important economic area for us. So that has been included within the project. There's been significant stakeholder consultation. This is going to be a participatory approach. This is the first of 6 missions over the course of the 12-month program in which these projects will be identified and developed. And we estimate that those projects will be valued somewhere in the region of $350 million. So some significant infrastructural activities, and we'll be seeking concessionary funding, grant funding, starting with the Green Climate Fund, but plus other climate financing agencies. Now, moving on to another area, the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, the UNFCCC. This is the governing body for all climate action globally. Grenada has the status as being the only country within the Caribbean where an office of the UNFCCC exists. And it is for that reason, the existence of that office, that the Green Climate Fund, who we will be leaning on heavily. We're involved in a number of major projects. There is the cruise project, the water resilience project, valued at $125 million. There's the enhanced direct access project together with Antigua and Dominica, valued at $20 million US dollars. Support for the climate resilient city. So a lot of engagement and traction with the GCF. But because of the presence of this UNFCCC office here in Grenada, the Green Climate Fund has started a pilot where they have relocated a country specialist who is responsible for the Caribbean and Latin America right here in Grenada to push the climate financing activities within the region. But this week, the Ministry of Climate Resilience also met with the UNFCCC representatives in Panama, and we are looking at establishing a measurements and reporting and verification unit right here in Grenada. And the significance of this is that Grenada will be the regional hub for the monitoring and measurement of our climate mitigation progress. So how do we reduce greenhouse gases within the region? And that unit will be based right here in Grenada. What is also significant is that this unit is going to be looking at the area of climate pricing, carbon pricing, and carbon financing. So how do we offset carbon generating countries with low carbon generation, such as the Caribbean, such as Grenada? How do we offset that against high carbon producing, greenhouse gas producing developed countries and the financial opportunities, financing opportunities that exist within that trading that the region could potentially benefit for additional climate financing. So a very significant development there, and we are establishing Grenada as the hub for climate financing for the Caribbean region. Mr. Deputy President, moving on to education and the school book program, I simply want to just update this House that all school books by now should have been distributed to all schools, and the value of the government's investment in school books for this year alone is $2.6 million. This is not an insignificant sum, Mr. Deputy President. Yet we still hear those who say there is no school book program. That is far from the truth. What is notable is the approach of this administration, as in our last term, 2013 to 2018, is that our focus for providing school books are to those who are most vulnerable, not to those who can readily afford them. And taking this approach means that there are additional government resources available to fund other programs that were neglected during the period 2008 to 2013, such as a school transportation program, uniform assistance, school feeding program, other needy assistance programs that we saw cut during that period, 2008. I'm just wrapping up, Mr. Deputy President. So we will continue to strengthen the school book program, ensuring that resources are being invested in those areas that are most needed. But Mr. Deputy President, the school book program is alive, is in existence, and is serving those who need it most. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Probably I could take a moment to just welcome our students from St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School. We hope that you enjoy our sitting today. We have a very special bill we'll be debating, the one on the Caribbean Court of Justice. So if you are around for that, I hope you enjoy what we do.
Item number 8, presentation of papers and reports from select committees.
Mr. Deputy President, I too would like to welcome the students, and we've been instructed to be on our best behavior for all of you, so I hope this is something that you will enjoy. Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the following papers and reports be laid on the table. 1, the report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the resources managed for the period from the 1st of January 2017 to the 31st of December 2017 by the Project Coordination Unit within the Ministry of Finance and Energy, Safety Net Advancement Project, SNAP. 2, reports of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Basic Needs Trust Fund, BNTF, Grenada, for the period 1st of January 2017 to 31st of December 2017. 3, Grenada Development Bank 2017 Annual Report. 4, Annual Report for the National Insurance Board for the year ended 31st December 2016. 5, Annual Report 2017, Grenada Council for Technical and Vocational Education and Training, National Training Agency. 6, reports of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Grenada Bureau of Standards for the year ended 31st December 2017. 7, reports of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the resources managed for the period 1st January 2017 to 31st December 2017 by the Project Coordination Unit within the Ministry of Finance and Energy for the Regional Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project. 8, Office of the Ombudsman Annual Report 2017. 9, Grenada Ports Authority Annual Report and Accounts 2017. 10, Report of the Director of Audit, Grenada, on the financial statements of the Office of the Integrity Commission for the year ended 31st December 2016. And finally, 11, representations by the Minister for Finance, Planning, Economic Development and Physical Development on the 2017 report of the Fiscal Responsibility Oversight Committee.
And it is so ordered that these papers and reports be laid on the table.
Item number 9, petitions. Item number 10, government notices. Item number 11, unofficial notices. Item number 12, questions. Item number 13, personal explanations. Item number 14, motions.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas debate on the gracious address delivered by the Governor-General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament on Friday, the 27th of April, 2018, was deferred to a date to be named. Be it resolved, said address be deferred to a date to be fixed.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that it be resolved that whereas the debate, the gracious address delivered by the Governor-General on the occasion of the ceremonial state opening of the first session of the 10th Parliament on Friday, the 27th of April 2018, be deferred to a date to be fixed. Honourable members, the question is that the motion as put forward by the Leader of Government Business be approved. All those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Item number 15, bills.
Senator Cox.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Conveyancing and Law of Property Amendment Bill 2018.
A bill for an act to amend the Conveyancing and Law of Property Act, Cap 64, shortly entitled Conveyancing and Law of Property Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. Deputy President, the bill before us for amendment, the Conveyancing and Law of Property Amendment Bill 2018, is a very important amendment that we are seeking to do today at this sitting. By way of background, Mr. Deputy President, in accordance with the provision of the Conveyancing and Law of Property Act, Cap 64 of the Principal Act, Grenada adopts an unregistered system of establishing title to land. Mr. Deputy President, for example, in the case of purchasing or sale of land, one must have a title deed, a clear title deed to complete such transactions. The deeds and land registry contain copies of various deeds registered over the years, and searches are so conducted mainly in relation to obtain a continuous chain of holders of land. Mr. President, the Principal Act does not specify any commencement period for conducting searches. As such, usually searches are commenced far back as 60 years in accordance with the common law practice. As a consequence, Mr. Deputy President, of this precedent, tremendous amounts of searches are conducted at the Deeds and Land Registry. And the challenge with this current process is that most of the index books containing the relevant information required for properly completing searches have been dilapidated and therefore render most of the searches as inconclusive. This results in numerous complaints that records are incomplete, thus present a certain risk of persons purchasing properties that may well lend itself to some legal challenges going forward, Mr. Deputy President, which have happened in cases in the past. Mr. Deputy President, we seek to address this with this amendment to see how we can fix this. Over the years, several attempts have been made to rectify the situation by rewriting a number of the indexes and placing insertions in transactions in computer system. But as you know, this approach is one that is very cumbersome and it takes time. Also, looking at other countries, Mr. Deputy President, other Caribbean jurisdictions with unregistered systems like ours, such as Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago, they too have enacted legislation similar to what we are seeking to do here this morning by reducing the period for which searches are to commence. So currently, we do searches up to 60 years. So if somebody wants to purchase a piece of land from any colleague who inside here who might have land for sale, that person who is conducting that conveyance would have to go back 60 years to find out who was the first owner and do a chain to see how that land has moved from hand to hand to ensure that proper search is done, to ensure that the person who say owned the land actually is the rightful owner of that land. So you have to go back 60 years. In Trinidad, they have amended the legislation to go back to 20 years. In Dominica, they have amended to go back to 30 years. Mr. President, we are seeking to make this amendment to go back to 30 years. The reason for that, Mr. President, why are we seeking this amendment? Due to a number of unfortunate incidents, like for example, during Hurricane Ivan, some of the records have gotten damaged from water damage at the registry. And as such, that render some gaps within the period in which you have to search. So in some cases, when you go back 40 years, there is nothing there. There is a gap. So you might get something 50 years, you might get something 30, some you mightn't get 40, some you might get, so there are gaps in between. So you cannot really complete your search properly. In most cases, the lawyers would tell you that they would have to go to the client and say, look, we weren't able to find anything for year 35 and 36. However, we can proceed with your permission. But if for some reason somebody come forward later on with a deed within those years, there's a likelihood that they could challenge you. But there is no records to show. So that is one of the reasons why we're trying to rectify this. Mr. Deputy President, also, we're talking about books. We know that books, after a number of years, some of them, they just wither away, they deteriorate, and that is a challenge. We recognize the most ideal thing for us is to have a computerized system. This will require significant investment on our part. This will require extensive work in terms of doing topographic maps and having all this registry built. But we believe that what we're seeking to do today, this amendment, is a step in the right direction to remedy the situation currently. But definitely, we will definitely have to move towards what you call a registered system where no searches would not have to be done. It will be much more easier because everything is up to date. So, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, in looking at the legislation before us, the legislation seeks to insert a new section 39 of the Principal Act. And if you permit me, Mr. Deputy President, to read section 39(1), statutory commencement of title. And I read, in the completion of any contract of sale involving land after the commencement of the Conveyancing and Law of Property Amendment Act 2018, and subject to any stipulation to the contrary in the contract, 30 years shall be the period of commencement of the land, the title of land. So that is what we're seeking to do. There is a second part, Mr. Deputy President, which deals with the issue of persons who have acquired land due to under the Possessory Titles Act of 2016. If you can recall, Mr. Deputy President, in this honorable house, at a different place, we passed legislation enacting the Possessory Titles Act, allowing persons to get a deed for lands after acquiring it, for being on it for a period of 12 years without any interruption after 12 years, continuous interruption, Mr. President. This amendment does not affect persons who acquired lands under that act. There's an exception in this case under the Possessory Titles Act of 2016, Mr. Deputy President. So, Mr. Deputy President, with this background and an overview of the amendment, we ask this honorable house to commend this bill for a second reading, Mr. Deputy President. Thank you very much.
Senator Gawi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I stand to give my full support to the second reading of the bill before us. And to speak specifically as it relates to the time that we are living in, and I'm happy that the honorable member speaks to the modern times. We're moving towards a computerized system because primarily what we're trying to achieve with this amendment is to create an avenue or a facility to ensure that root title of properties are established and established within a period that you have information to create that establishment. As it is right now, and we understand the difficulties that those persons who are to do searches are encountering at this point in time. But what we do know, with the information that is available, 30 years is pretty safe. We have information that will guarantee in quote-unquote terms that you can establish title. But I look forward to us moving the bar, and very shortly. There are other means around that you can establish title without using this 30 years about a registration system. But we need to get there. We need to get there and get there faster. The only, I think, of the 3 countries in the region may be using this system to establish title. And we need to move fast. We speak quite a lot of the technology and what we can do with the computerized system. And I must commend the authorities, because I know just about 3 months ago, we were presented with the LiDAR reports. We had this team that came and did a topographical studies, had a specialized plane flying over the country and capturing the data, so that at least we can have, as it relates, as it were, establishing location of lands and the likes and so forth, to bring us to that place. Yes, I understand it's going to take a huge investment to get us there, but no investment is too big to ease the life of our people and to create this sort of environment where we can live harmoniously. So whatever the investment, it is important that we ensure that we provide the necessary resources to make it happen. But I understand everything happened in its time. But I want to commend the passage of this bill, because it's the step in the right direction. The step in the right direction, and I'm happy to give my support for the second reading. I thank you.
Senator George.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I rise as well, Mr. Deputy President, in support of the bill, primarily because, Mr. Deputy President, it speaks to this administration's commitment to augmenting the law and its application and the processes that are related to it as well. I echo Senator Cox's reference to the recent passage, well, not so recent anymore, but in relative terms, the recent passage of the Possessory Titles Act, which would have alleviated ameliorated a very difficult situation for property landowners who would have been unable to find a mechanism that would have allowed them to have title to land, notwithstanding the fact that they would have been in occupation for quite some time. This bill as well, Mr. Deputy President, ameliorates a situation that arises, and I speak here, I take off my hat as a senator and I speak here wearing my hat as an attorney at law, that practitioners are confronted with every day. It is no secret that the records in the Deeds and Lands Registry are not conducive to timely searches and to searches that will give the stakeholders the assurance that having gone back the 60-year period, you can be 100% certain that title is clear. And so certainly it is a good move. I echo as well the sentiments of Senator Gawi when he speaks to the urgent need for us to transition to a system of registered title. I believe us and St. Vincent are the only islands in the English-speaking Caribbean who rely on a strict system of unregistered title. Trinidad and some of the other jurisdictions have a combined system, as does the UK. And really what the registered system of title would do is it would allow for a person who is interested in purchasing a piece of land to check a register and to see who is the registered owner of that particular piece of land. And having confirmed that that person is recorded in the register as the owner of that piece of land, they can then walk away, comforted in the fact that this is the person that the law will recognize as the owner without the need and the time and the expense of having to search 60 years back. In this case, the time has been shortened, but I certainly do look forward to an expeditious move in that direction. As Senator Garwe has said, it takes time, it takes resources. I am comforted in the fact that the process has begun and expect that as quickly as possible, we will make that transition into the modern times. I thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Sorry?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Deputy President, and thank you, Honorable Member Cox, for yielding. I stand in support of the bill before us, Mr. Deputy President, and many of the points in support of the bill have already been expressed by honorable members. But I feel obligated as an attorney at law to still stand and give a few remarks in support of this bill, because I know the enormous advantage that this bill would bring to the practice of law and conveyancing. In fact, as I was leaving a mediation session the other day, a colleague came up to me very excited about this bill, and she said, you know what, you guys need to pass this bill because it's really hard out here. And I understand what she's saying, because anyone who visits the registry and has sight of the libels, of the indices, will understand the plight of attorneys and search clerks. Many of the books are in tatters, missing pages, and it makes the task of establishing a clear, marketable title for a vendor for a period of 60 years virtually impossible. It's virtually impossible. There will be gaps, and we find ourselves in a position where we have to give disingenuous advice to our clients, because it's our duty to assure them that the title that they have is good title and that they're able to pass on that title without any challenges. But when we do our searches and we are encountered with so many gaps in the chain of title, then we are advising them or allowing them to proceed with conveyances and transactions that there's a high risk in the future that these transactions may be challenged. So we are opening our clients, well, not opening our clients, but we're walking into this, we're leading them into potential risks for challenges of their title. And I think that this legislation would significantly reduce that risk. I think eventually, as was said by Honorable Member George, the ideal position would be a registered system where the title of landowners would be cemented in the register, and there can be no challenges to it, and that anyone who is conveying property or transferring property can be satisfied that they have done so legitimately. Honorable Member Garwe have pointed out the challenges, the challenges of getting to that point, but I am encouraged by his sense of motivation and his optimism that eventually we can get there. So this is a step in the right direction. Honorable Garwe mentioned, or it was Honorable Member Cox mentioned, that Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago, they have, through their legislation, reduced the period to 40 years and 20 years respectively. Same can be said of Bahamas, where the period is 30 years. St. Kitts, the period is 40 years. Barbados, it is 20 years. Grenada is usually known for being trailblazers. We're always the ones to challenge. We're the island that's always, looking for trouble in a good sense. When you look at our history, 1979, etc. And I do not think that we should be left behind when it comes to our conveyancing practices. Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines are the only two Caribbean countries who still adhere to this common law period of 60 years. So I'm glad that this administration sees it fit to bring us in line with the way that the rest of our Caribbean brothers are moving. And I think that it's a good sign for things to come. But I just want to let everyone know on behalf of well, I don't know if I can speak on behalf of the entire legal fraternity, but from what I've been hearing, that this bill is welcomed by the legal fraternity. And yes, thank you. I support the passing of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I too stand in full support of the bill before us. I will not repeat all that's been said. I think it's been very well articulated by members, but one area I would like us to drill down on, and all of those, anyone who's been involved in whether it is purchasing, selling, transferring land, anyone who's visited the registry will know the challenges that, that is faced there. But it's a focus on business and how this amendment, the passage of this bill, will improve the ease of doing business. And this is not something that is insignificant. When we look at trying to find root title going back to 60 years, the comments from my colleagues here who have legal experience here and some of the advice that they have to give to their clients to try and instill confidence where the evidence doesn't actually substantiate that, and the doubt and the ambiguity that is created in property transfers. And the impact of that is it slows down economic activity. You may have persons who have the resources to make a purchase, but can't because the property that they're seeking to purchase is in question, because they may go back 50 years, but not the required 60 years. So that doubt, the knowledge that the title that you have, especially if it's a significant investment, that it could be challenged some way down the road, can be off-putting to persons making purchases or those wanting to sell, and it does have a direct economic impact. So I'm pleased and I commend its government for making this bold step, notwithstanding the need for the bolder step, which is moving to a registered system. But we know that's going to take time, that's going to take significant resources, but it is on the agenda. It is something that is being worked on. But as an interim measure, moving from 60 years to 30 years will alleviate many of the challenges that are faced, will instill greater confidence in the property market, and will have a significant positive impact on our economic development. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Andrew Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. And I was not too sure that I wanted to speak, but after listening to my learned colleagues on the other side, especially the practicing attorneys, I think it is extremely important to raise the following. I support the aspect of narrowing the gap, but I think you would know better than me, through you, Mr. Deputy President, that a number of persons in our society has come into property not through the best means. And a number of our people in our communities, because they are not as lettered or cultured, have lost their properties. And therefore it is incumbent upon us to call upon all of us to be aware of this change, because you are narrowing the gap from 60 to 30. Yes, So I'm making this appeal through you, Mr. Deputy President, because the aspect of especially land ownership within families, has created a number of problems outside it. So let us not only pay attention to the vendors and the purchasers, but what about the dispossessed children? Yes, who, because they were not able to be afforded the proper representation, yes, found themselves on the side where they were denied their rightful property. This change calls upon us to pay particular attention to this. I know buyer beware, I know it is said, and it is said that ignorance of the law is not a defense. But for those who are not able to get the rightful representation outside it, and to be pointed out their rights, yes, especially we in this house have that responsibility, not as attorneys, and not as vendors, and not as vendors and as attorneys, but as the people tasked with that responsibility to ensure that justice is done as much as possible throughout the board across the country. To make that point, you will know better than me of that which I speak. Many of our working class people, many of our working class children, yes, who, just to repeat, have not been able to afford themselves the legal representation, has found themselves without their parents' property. Because 30 years is one generation, 60 years is two. I'm agreeing with narrowing it down, but I'm also calling to do all that is necessary to limit as much as possible and to wipe away that which we know currently exists outside there. That would be my contribution on behalf of the dispossessed people outside there, who know rather than going back 60 years to be 30, who stands a greater chance of losing their property. But we have that responsibility to call upon everyone and to call upon probably the legal fraternity to, I'm not sure if you still have it, your pro bono day, through you, Mr. Deputy President. Sorry for looking across the but my colleagues. Yes, probably to have more pro bono day that deals especially with land property issues, because it is a major issue outside it, and that would be my contribution. Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, let me first take this opportunity to thank colleagues for the contribution on this amendment. However, Mr. Deputy President, we are seeking this amendment also taking into account the integrity of the searches. And that has been looked at in its entirety. And I hear the concern by our colleague, Senator Lewis, on the other side. This has been looked at significantly. There are even calls that we should even make it shorter. We should make it 20 years. But we have not acceded to that for good reason. Some of the issues that you raised through you, Mr. Deputy President, that Senator Lewis would have raised, is as a result of the gaps by trying to do the search over the 60 years. Because of not having information in between that has allowed persons in some cases to be deprived of their property in a rightful manner. So this in itself is even correcting some of the current challenges that we have in that regard. Because from 30 years going forward, based on what is happening from 30 years, there is clear records going forward. But after that, there are gaps. Because if, Mr. Deputy President, we don't have information, neither yourself or myself cannot lay claim if the information is not there. And that has created a number of challenges. And hence, that is one of the problems, the same issue that our dear colleague Senator Lewis would have raised. That is one of the issues that is affected by those gaps. But at the same time, Mr. Deputy President, this amendment does not in any way lend itself to say who should make an attempt to go and clear up lands that parents or grandparents have 40 years or somewhere. That this has nothing to do with that. That has to do with persons on their own will, free will, deciding whether or not I want to go and see what's the situation in my grandparents' land or my parents' land. This has nothing to do with that. But this amendment will help significantly to ensure that what for 30 years, for the last 30 years, what has happened coming forward to present. Your concern, Mr. Deputy President, that was raised by Senator Lewis is one that is quite valid, and based on consultation with our legal counsel through the legal affairs, they have done due diligence to ensure that the integrity of the searches would not be compromised in this regard. So with these extra contributions, Mr. Deputy President, I commend the bill for a second reading.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a second time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Conveyancing and Law of Property Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. Cox.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause.
The question is that this Honourable House resolves itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, the House is now in committee.
Clause 2, insertion of new section 39 of the Principal Act.
The question is that Clause 2, insertion of a new Section 39 to the Principal Act, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title and commencement.
The question is that Clause 1, short title and commencement, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
The question is that the Senate resumes and the chair of the committee reports progress on the bill. As many are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Senate now resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole Senate and passed without amendment.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
The question is that the chairman's report be adopted. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. The question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Conveyancing and Law of Property Amendment Act 2018.
Senator Rawi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I rise to introduce for first reading a bill shortly entitled Extradition Treaty, Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China, Bill 2018.
A bill for an act to incorporate into the domestic law of Grenada a treaty between the government of Grenada and the government of the People's Republic of China on extradition, shortly entitled Extradition, Government of Grenada, the Government of the People's Republic of China Act 2018.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the House be suspended so that we can take the bill through all its reading at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. Deputy President, this bill seeks to introduce into our domestic law the extradition treaty which was signed between the government of Grenada and the government of the People's Republic of China. This treaty between the parties was signed on the 24th of March, 2016. And this was in an effort to improve the cooperation at all levels between the government of Grenada and the government of the People's Republic of China. It is well known, Mr. Deputy President, in international law that a state does not have any obligation to surrender an alleged criminal to a foreign state. This, Mr. President, Deputy President, is because of the principle of sovereignty, which states that each state has a legal authority over the people within its borders. As a result of the absence of international obligations and, of course, the desire for the right to demand criminal and other persons from countries, countries have evolved and have developed instruments, a web of extradition treaties to achieve this. Mr. Deputy President, the treaty between the government of Grenada and the government of the People's Republic of China, which embodies mutual arrangement made between the two countries for the purpose of extraditing persons from Grenada to China. The signing of the treaty alone, Mr. Deputy President, is not enough. But it's a preliminary endorsement of the obligations and arrangements therein. It does not create a binding legal obligation on behalf of the parties. As a result, Grenada is now required to enter into its legislative agenda actions to make the said treaty legally enforceable and binding in our domestic laws. Section 3 of the treaty of this bill, Mr. Deputy President, have the force of law and to provide the legal authority for extraditing persons from Grenada to China, pursuant to the obligations assumed by Grenada under the said treaty when it was signed on the 24th of March, 2016. This treaty is also to be passed, Mr. Deputy President, in China. It has to be brought into the domestic laws to give it the feet, the same powers that we are doing here today, so that they can achieve the objective that they have set themselves when we signed this agreement in 2016. In addition to this treaty, it is well known of the excellent relationship, the wonderful relationship we have been enjoying with the government and people of governments of the People's Republic of China. And I do believe with the introduction or passing into law today, this bill, this will further enhance and cement the cooperation and friendship that we have so enjoyed. And I look forward to greater things happening between the relationship of both countries as we continue to look forward to enhance our productivity within our states, enhance the development of our states, but most importantly, to ensure that we continue to create an environment for mutual respect and understanding, and that environment to ensure that our young people are given opportunities to look forward to grow, to develop in capacities. And we have seen over the years, with that mutual understanding, so much of our people have been given opportunities. We want this to continue. With this, Mr. Deputy President, I want to commend this bill for its second reading. Thank you.
Senator Garvey, it seems as though you can proceed to wrap it up.
I will defer to my colleague, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair. Mr. Deputy Chair, I'll be very brief, but I would like it to go on record that I fully support this bill. Mr. President, Grenada is simply known as a very peaceful and harmonious place. But also, Mr. President, I see this bill as improving Grenada's reputations internationally. As you know, Mr. President, in 2013, the government of Grenada would have established its economic program, its citizenship by investment program. And this program has been exceptionally well run, has been providing much adequate resources to the state that is assisting in its infrastructural development, in its human resource development. And Mr. President, what is interesting to note is that we're relying on investors, particularly from China, Asia, and other parts of the world to invest here. So, Mr. President, according to the IMF report, that Grenada's economic program is a gold standard in the Caribbean region for transparency. And as a result, we have to ensure that we continue that image and continue to transcend and ensure that the world understands that we are serious about our environment and our international relationship. And as a result, Mr. President, we want to also continue our strong cooperation and friendship with China. So, Mr. President, I give full support to this bill.
Senator Kim George.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I likewise intend to be brief. I rise, Mr. Deputy President, in support of the bill, and to mention very briefly two aspects of the bill that I think bear referencing. The first is the mutuality of the arrangement. I think it's important to stress and to emphasize that just as the government of Grenada would be obligated to honor the treaty on the request of the government of the People's Republic of China, the treaty contemplates that likewise the government of the People's Republic of China would be obligated to honor the terms of the treaty at the request of the government of Grenada. And so it is not a one-sided exercise, but it is an exercise that is intended to strengthen the criminal justice system of both countries. And secondly, Mr. Deputy President, I wanted to make reference to Article 3A and B of the treaty, which speaks to mandatory grounds for refusal, and in particular Article 3B, which importantly guarantees a person whose extradition has been requested the safeguards contained in our own constitution. I believe it is section 1 of our constitution, and there's other sections that follow, which speak to the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. And so it is important to note as well that, and as Senator Cadet has said, it is important in these times that sovereign nations should make such arrangements. But it is important to note that this administration has seen it fit, and likewise the government of the People's Republic of China, to ensure that the constitutional provisions that Grenadian citizens ordinarily enjoy will also be applied for the benefit of any citizen of the Republic, the People's Republic of China, who finds himself subject to an extradition request. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thought it was important to point out those two aspects of the bill, as I think they are important for people to understand that although the arrangement is made, there are certain safeguards. So it is not a matter of an automatic right to extradition, but it has to conform with certain fundamental laws that we hold very dear as a people. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Cox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. I too rise to give my full support to the Extradition Treaty Bill 2018 between the government of Grenada and the government of and People's Republic of China. Mr. Deputy President, this is a very important initiative. While this is just a mutual agreement between both countries, we have seen that we already have an economic development partnership and relationship with the People's Republic of China. And as such, I think this is a critical component that is missing to complement that initiative because we have a number of engagements with them. It's important that those engagements are protected properly. As such, I really support this initiative. Mr. Deputy President, we have such relationships and such agreements, and even legally, laws on the books with countries like the United States. The extradition, they can make requests for persons, citizens of the United States to be extradited. We have laws speaking to that. So this is not something new, but it is something that is required and something important when you have that relationship with developed or developing countries, that you have such arrangements. And so I think this is a step in the right direction. I would love to see a legislation go further that speaks to it in a more formal way for us to establish that. They are an important development partner to us, and we appreciate that initiative and that effort and that relationship that we have with the People's Republic of China. As such, Mr. Deputy President, I give my full support to the passage of this bill. Thank you very much.
Senator Gawi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I want to say a special thank you to the colleague members for the support to the second reading or passage of this bill. I will like to also bring to the table, in as much as we will be requested probably to extradite someone, there might be the belief that it might be a cost to the state. It will not be. So if there was a request made by the People's Republic of China to Grenada to extradite one of the citizens, all expense related to this transaction will be borne by the People's Republic of China. Vice versa, if there is a citizen of ours over in that part that we have to get over, we will have to foot the bill, as it were. So all in all, this bill before us today is designed to ensure that we follow the path of the international community, that you have relationships, you have treaties with your partners, you have treaties for various levels of cooperation. This is one that speaks specifically to development as far as I can see. And I want to thank my colleague member for citing the CBI. As you know, it is it's a gold standard for citizen by investment programs in the world. And that's what the IMF would have said. The same IMF that historically people saw as this monster. And if they come into your country, woe be unto you, and they destroy you. But we have seen a different dispensation in this period. And they're saying, while we had quite a lot of criticism about our citizen by investment program, and all this issue about savory characters might come into our country, we have done the necessaries in ensuring that, yes, our monitoring system, our checks and the likes and so forth are done before someone is given our instruments. And now the IMF is saying this is a gold standard. And they commend us. What this is doing going to enhance what we have been doing and what we've been saying all along, that we will leave no stone unturned in protecting the sovereignty of this country. So if someone, by God forbid, got into this country and have our instruments, and later to be found, this is the gateway towards dealing with them, to bring them to justice. And I am so happy today, Mr. Deputy President, that we are passing this at this point in time to continue to protect our country. With this, I want to commend this bill for its second reading. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a second time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Extradition, Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China Act 2018.
Senator Garvey.
Mr. President, Deputy President, I beg to move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate. So we'll consider the bill part by part.
The question is that this Honorable House resolves itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. All those who have the opinion say aye.
Aye.
Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This House is now in committee.
Clause 2, interpretation.
The question is that Clause 2, interpretation, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Clause 3, treaty to have the force of law.
The question is that Clause 3 forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Clause 1, short title.
The question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
The question is that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. As many of that opinion say aye, of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. This Honorable Senate now resumes. Hold on, Senator Brown. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole Senate and passed without amendment. Senator Gowrie.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
The question is that the chairman's report be adopted. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. The question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, we seem to have omitted a section of the bill when we were doing it in committee, which is the schedule. We didn't particularly get that one, so we'll go back just to make sure that we have it properly covered. Look. So we go back to committee. The House is now in committee. Sorry?
Mr. President, I beg to move that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause.
Thank you, Senator Gowrie.
Clause 4, schedule.
The question is that clause 4, schedule, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 2, interpretation.
The question is that clause 2, interpretation, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 3, treaty to have the force of law.
The question is that clause 3, treaty to have the force of law, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
The question is that clause 1 forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Schedule.
The question is that schedule forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy Chair, Within our order paper, the schedule was not mentioned, so I'm wondering if there was not a need for us to make an amendment.
Yes, it's to the back. It wasn't print, it's to the back of your order paper. It's right, so it's there.
Stand corrected, Mr. Deputy Chair. Mr. Deputy Chair, I beg to move that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
The question is, honorable members, that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This honorable Senate now resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole Senate and passed without amendment. Senator Gawi.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
The question is that the chairman's report be adopted. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senator Gawi.
Mr. Deputy President, I move that the bill gets the third reading.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. The question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Extradition, Government of Grenada, and the Government of the People's Republic of China Act 2018.
Senator Gawi.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Treaty, the Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China, Bill 2018.
A bill for an act to incorporate into the domestic laws of Grenada a treaty between the Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China on mutual legal assistance in criminal matters, shortly entitled Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Treaty, Government of Grenada, the Government of the People's Republic of China, Act 2018.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it.
Aye.
Senator Howard.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move that the bill be read a second time. Mr. Deputy President, the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty in legal matters between the Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China was signed also on the 24th of March 2016 with a view to improve the effective cooperation between the two countries with respect to offering mutual legal assistance in criminal matters on the basis of sovereignty, quality, and mutual benefits. In accordance with the provisions of the treaty, Mr. Deputy President, the parties are to provide the widest possible legal assistance in criminal investigations, prosecutions, and judicial procedures in criminal matters. Such assistance, Mr. Deputy President, include serving of documents through all proceedings, taking testimonies or statements from persons providing documents, records, and articles of evidence, obtaining and providing expert evaluation, locating and identifying persons, conducting inspections and examinations, making persons available for investigations and giving of evidence, or assisting in investigation, transferring persons in custody to give evidence, or assisting in investigations and conducting inquiries, searches, freezing and seizing of assets related to proceeds of crime or criminal activities and instruments of crime, and notifying of the results of criminal proceedings and supplying criminal records. As we are aware today, Mr. Deputy President, global groups and individuals have been very aggressive and innovative in capitalizing in today's global economy. And with the sophisticated technology that we have today, they have been able to use these technologies to create havoc on the unsuspecting investor or simple homeowner. With cooperation such as this between the government of Grenada and the People's Republic of China, will certainly impact heavily, I do believe, on the ability of these groups and individuals, international criminals, I will say, to operate successfully and to help citizens everywhere in the often struggles to remain in safety, even in their own homes. And we have heard of it. We have read it on the news of the unsuspecting investor putting their money into operations, and we hear what happened thereafter. As indicated before, with the signing of this treaty on March 24, 2016, it's only the preliminary obligation or the preliminary endorsement to ensure that arrangement between the two countries are synchronized and are placed in law to achieve the objective when they signed the treaty just over 2 years ago. It is noteworthy, Mr. Deputy President, the signing does not create a binding legal obligation. Hence the reason why we are here today, to ensure that we incorporate or bring into law to make this treaty legally binding between the two parties. Therefore, there is a need that Grenada, with passing this bill here today, will be able to offer assistance to China if they so require from us, and vice versa, we'll be able to request information from them, as I say, mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. The legal effect will be given to this treaty with the enactment of the Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Treaty, Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China. Section 3, Mr. Deputy President. The treaty will have the force of law which will provide the legal authority for giving assistance in criminal matters pursuant to the obligations assumed by government under this treaty. The bill further strengthens our cooperation efforts between the two countries. When we take note of a lot of the investment that is happening within the country, and we have seen the involvement of the People's Republic of China in the development of this country. One, we just look at the National Stadium and you see what they have done. They have the contract, and they have contracted contractors and contracting firms from China to come to work on their behalf in helping us. As a matter of fact, right now, I know Minister Cox is quite happy because his ministry would have facilitated a team from China recently as we signed the agreement for the facelift of the National Cricket Stadium in preparation for the 2 one-days that we're looking forward to next year, 25th and 27th, Mr. Deputy President, of February, between Grenada, we're getting there, boy, West Indies and England. The point here, with those contracts that has been signed between China, People's Republic of China, and contracting firms, if there's something went wrong with one of the principals or so on, they're here. Whatever assistance legally that is necessary for China to put its case forward, probably to get extradited, but the person, Grenada, will be able, by legal authority, to provide such assistance. This is a step in the right direction. When this administration came into office, one of the things that we spoke about, creating an environment for our country to develop. And we have seen a number of programs being initiated, and the country started doing well. And in as much as you're doing well, there are so many investors wanting to come here. And we've seen it coming to invest their monies. It's not a free-for-all. This is about securing this piece of rock that we call pure Grenada. So with every bill, the 2 bills that I'm piloting here today, this 2 bills speaks to continue to protect the sovereignty of this country. And I want to commend the government for taking this bold initiative, signing cooperation and agreement to ensure that Grenada continue to remain safe. But more than that, to continue to remain peaceful. One of the factors that we have seen as encouraging persons to wanting to come to invest in Grenada, yes, the beauty of this country is one of it, but the safety. And Mr. Deputy President, we want to maintain that. Because these are our young students here. This is their home. This is where they have to live. We as administrators now have to continue to create and fashion that environment that they will be at peace. They will be able to survive and do well in their home. So we have to do what is necessary. This bill today is signing into law the guarantee that they will enjoy a peaceful country. But they have the part to play. Yes, you get the opportunity to learn, to study and do well, develop yourself and continue to build your country. But you have to stay on the straight and narrow, to follow law and order, and to ensure that what you do in school today contribute to the development of this country tomorrow. This is what we're leaving for you. So we will do all that we can, Mr. Deputy President, to ensure that we continue to provide that environment. And yes, we will welcome other investors. And as we do this, we will sign into law whatever treaty there is to ensure that if you're unsavory and you came through the cracks, we're going to get you out when the time comes. Because we want to maintain the peace and security and serenity within the state we call Grenada. And I thank you, Mr. President, that the government continues to look for innovative ways to continue to protect our country. With this, I want to commend this bill for its second reading.
Senator Patricia Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I stand in support of the bill before us, the Mutual Legal Assistance Bill. And this bill speaks to the continuing relationship between Grenada and the People's Republic of China. Since the commencement of diplomatic relations in 1985, I believe there was a break and resumption of those relations in 2005, we have seen cooperation between these two states in the area of tourism, in areas of tourism, training and education, trade, and this mutual assistance in legal matters is just another step in the strengthening of these bonds. And I think this is a good sign for Grenada. It shows that we are players in the international arena. These days, a lot of things get done through diplomacy. Post-World War II and the formation of the UN, there has been a movement or an encouragement in the international community of cooperation among member states in order to achieve common goals. And I think that Caribbean countries, including ours, should take advantage of that and should engage with international players and should enter into treaties and conventions as long as they are mutually beneficial. And I think that this is a good sign. This is the second bill before us this morning of this nature. The treaties to which they speak are, I should say, they place the states on equal footing. They speak to offenses, for example, in the two states, which are offenses in both of the states. The terms of termination of the treaties, the limitations with respect to the types of assistance that the treaties speak to, they are mutual in every respect. So I think that the treaties, that our effort here today to give legal force to these treaties is commendable. We see recently, well, there's a trend among larger countries to enter into these treaties and never ratify them. And we can speak to our brother to the north. Just entering into those treaties, and then they have no obligation to perform any of the obligations under the treaty because it has not been ratified or it has not been incorporated into domestic law. So I think that our move here today to incorporate this treaty and the previous one into domestic law shows that we are serious about meeting our obligations under these treaties, and we are serious about international relations. And I hope that this is a sign of greater things to come in terms of our interaction with our international players. And I hope to see more activity, especially from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in that regard. So thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Cox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. I too would like to go on record my support for this bill Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Treaty, Bill 2018. Mr. Deputy President, this is a significant initiative. As you know, we have Grenadians who are living in China. Most of them are at school, some are actually working in China. And likewise, we have citizens from the People's Republic of China living here in Grenada. And as such, this creates an environment for both countries, if so necessary, to have that relationship on any legal matter that may arise and to provide us support to facilitate either to apprehend or to clear somebody who may find themselves in any legal challenge. So this is a critical instrument for to strengthen the cooperation between both countries. So, Mr. President, I want to go on record as giving my full support to the passage of this bill, and I do look forward to more initiatives by this government in support of that relationship that we have with the People's Republic of China going forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Dennis Roberts.
Morning, Mr. Deputy President. I want to stand to support the bill and to reiterate to persons who may not understand it that it is really something not new to us in Grenada, because we do have such agreements with Commonwealth countries. So to pacify our emotion, I think it's a good piece of legislation for just this particular country, and to explain that it helps both countries, because if something may happen in China with a Grenadian there, or here in Grenada with someone of Chinese nationality, that the parties can go to their own countries to serve their time. Because usually, if you look at it economically, keeping somebody here, it's a burden on our resources, and likewise other ways. So I want to commend the bill. I know in Commonwealth countries we have done it before. We have cases where people came back to Grenada to being extradited under the law. So I want to add my voice in commending this bill for its passage.
Mr. President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a second time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Treaty, Government of Grenada and the Government of the People's Republic of China Act 2018.
Senator Garvey.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause.
The question is that this Honorable House resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This House is now in committee.
Clause 2, interpretation.
The question is that Clause 2, interpretation, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 3, treaty to have the force of law.
The question is that Clause 3, treaty to have the force of law, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Schedule.
The question is that schedule forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
The question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
The question is that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. As many as of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This Honorable Senate now resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole Senate and passed without amendment. Senator Gowrie.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
The question is that the chairman's report be adopted. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senator Gowrie.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. The question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do indeed have it.
An act shortly entitled Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Treaty, Government of Grenada and Government of the People's Republic of China Act 2018.
Senator Simon Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Constitution of Grenada Caribbean Court of Justice and renaming the Supreme Court Amendment Act 2018.
A bill for an act to alter the Constitution of Grenada to provide for the establishing of the Caribbean Court of Justice as the final appellate court for Grenada in substitution for Her Majesty in Council, and to provide for the renaming of the Supreme Court in Grenada to the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court and other justice-related matters, shortly entitled Constitution of Grenada, Caribbean Court of Justice and renaming of the Supreme Court Amendment Act 2018.
Senator Steele, just before you proceed, just give me a moment to just indicate a few things for our newer members. As this is a constitutional amendment, honorable members, especially for our newer members, as you are aware, this bill has to receive the majority support of the members of the Senate when we come to the section of passing. And in this particular instance, we are going to do this the support by division, meaning that every senator is going to have to indicate publicly their support to the bill either positively or negatively. Good. Senator Steele.
Mr. President, Deputy President, I beg to that the relevant standing order for the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
The question is that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. Senator Steele.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. Deputy President, the bill for an act shortly entitled Constitution of Grenada, Caribbean Court of Justice, and renaming the Supreme Court Amendment 2018 seeks to amend the Constitution of Grenada to enable accession to the Caribbean Court of Justice as the court of final appeal instead of the London-based Privy Council. In addition, Mr. Deputy President, the changing of the name of our Supreme Court from the Supreme Court of Grenada and the West Indies Associated States to the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, and this is in keeping with our regional members. Mr. Deputy President, the Privy Council, as our final court of appeal, is enshrined in Section 104 of our Constitution. Therefore, to make a change from the Privy Council to the Caribbean Court of Justice as Grenada's final appellate court requires an amendment to the Constitution in accordance with Section 39 of the Constitution. And in keeping with those constitutional requirements, this bill has already been passed in that other place, and passage through this Honourable House with a simple majority enables or lays the path for a referendum for the people to decide on November the 6th. And this is the same date as Antigua and Barbuda will be going to their referendum. Mr. Deputy President, our current court system consists of magistrates' courts, high court, Court of Appeal, with the final Court of Appeal being the Privy Council based in London. Therefore, when a defendant or a claimant is dissatisfied with the justice served here in Grenada, that person has the option to appeal, file their appeal with the Privy Council in the UK to overturn that decision. But that's only once that person has the financial means to do so. Mr. Deputy President, the bill before us lays out the mechanisms for the constitutional changes to enable accession to the CCJ. Sections 3 to 16 of the bill addresses the changes required within the Constitution to affect Grenada's accession to the CCJ as its final appellate court, with sections 17 to 31 outlining the requirements for the name change to the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. Mr. Deputy President, what I seek to do in my presentation is to lay out the arguments to support that accession to the CCJ as a final appellate court, and my colleagues on this side will build on the arguments as we go through this debate. The arguments, the principles for the justification of this amendment, of this move from the Privy Council to the CCJ. First is Grenada honouring its treaty obligations. Secondly, accessibility and cost. Third, speed and quality of the judgments that have been offered. An opportunity for us to build a mature Caribbean jurisprudence. And the fact that the UK government may itself withdraw support of the Privy Council for the Caribbean at any time. And finally, the completion of our independent status. So I'll talk through each of the justification. So first of all, with Grenada honoring its treaty obligations. Mr. Deputy President, the agreement establishing the Caribbean Court of Justice was signed by all CARICOM members, including Grenada, on the 14th of February 2001. And on the 16th of April 2005, the official inauguration of the CCJ was held at the Queen's Hall, Port of Spain, Trinidad, which is the seat of that court. Mr. Deputy President, there are two jurisdictions. The original jurisdiction, which is responsible for issues connected to the interpretation of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which seeks to establish a common economic space among CARICOM members. All CARICOM members are active members of that original jurisdiction. The second is the appellate jurisdiction, which we speak to today, of which only 4 CARICOM members, Barbados, Belize, Guyana, and Dominica, have acceded to, and of which Grenada and Antigua and Barbuda will be seeking to follow come November the 6th, subject to the passing of this bill in this honorable House. As a signatory, Mr. Deputy President, Grenada, together with other member states, has paid its portion of the $100 million financial contribution to the court as established the court's operations. So we enjoy the benefits of the original jurisdiction, but we do not benefit from the benefits of the appellate, although we have already paid for it. So those who say the establishment of the CCJ as our final court of appeal would be a financial burden on us economically, Mr. Deputy President, we've already paid those dues, but not benefiting from the benefits of that court. So moving on to accessibility and cost, Mr. Deputy President. Throughout the 185-year history of the Privy Council, it's never been considered a court for the ordinary man. The high costs involved in taking cases to the Privy Council is an immediate barrier for most. The filing of an appeal with the Privy Council is more than 5 times greater than filing an appeal with the CCJ. 5 times, Mr. Deputy President. With the Privy Council located in London, the logistical costs of travel, of accommodation for the litigant, and that means carrying your Grenadian legal team, your lawyers, whatever technical support you need to support your particular case. And it's not just for the duration of the hearing, but the preparation for that. In addition, so we're looking at plane tickets, we're talking about hotels, we're talking about other incidentals. And then in addition to that, you need to retain an English-based legal team, which will consist of a solicitor, a barrister, other technical persons, and those fees, Mr. Deputy President, are not cheap. And once again, it's not just for the duration of the hearing itself, but all of the preparatory work that goes on in advance, which could be months in advance, and for detailed, complex cases, it could even be years in advance. So again, significant costs. And those are just the direct costs. There are other indirect costs that the litigant would have to bear. It's estimated that the minimum average cost, minimum, for taking a case to the Privy Council is $175,000 EC dollars. And there is no assurance that you're actually going to win that case and you'll have an opportunity to recoup those monies. So this is clearly out of the reach of the ordinary man. By contrast, the overall costs of appeal to the CCJ are considerably cheaper, an average 1/5 cheaper the cost of filing at the Privy Council. There is no need for a separate legal team. A local law firm can represent you at the CCJ. Cost of travel to Trinidad, if you go to the seat of the court, again, significantly cheaper than airfares, accommodation, etc., in the heart of London. The CCJ is also an itinerant court. It's a traveling court. There are instances where the court will come to you. It will travel around the region to member states, hearing cases as and when they arrive. So there may not be a need for your lawyers to even travel locally. And most importantly, the CCJ has embraced technology. So whether it's using conferencing facilities where lawyers can perform their duties, can represent you from their own offices or their homes, is a major positive and a major contributor to the reduction in costs. And also using technology in terms of the filing of appeals, that this can be done electronically, again, reducing the transactional costs. And as a result of this, as a result of the lowering of costs, ease of access, in the 3 years following its inception in 2005, civil appeals outnumbered criminal appeals by almost 7 to 1. And it's criminal appeals that are the most popular with the Privy Council. Civil matters that may be viewed as too trivial wouldn't even make it there. About 15% of civil cases filed in the CCJ were from persons too poor to cover the filing costs. And the court has a provision where it can waiver expenses. Once you're able to establish your lack of means, consideration can be given to your fees so it is affordable to the most vulnerable of us. And this is unprecedented in terms of appeals, Mr. Deputy President. And some of the cases, civil cases, that have been brought before the court include property disputes between poor tenants, public housing disputes, the admissibility of a police officer's testimony in a child abuse case, and a civil servant's dismissal from the public service. Mr. Deputy President, these are cases that ordinarily would not make it to the Privy Council. It would not be viewed as important enough. It would not be considered significant enough to warrant their attention or the costs that would be incurred, $175,000. But to the lives of those individuals, it is important. It is of significance. So having access to an appeal court process right here at home has significant benefit to the ordinary man. Mr. Deputy President, I was interested in the debate, listen to the debate in that other place, where you had a member sharing his own experiences, his family's experience, one of the wealthiest families in Grenada, where they had a case to bring to the Privy Council, a case they were confident was strong, but they had to think long and hard before they considered filing that appeal. So if the wealthy among us struggle with that decision, what about the man in Bac-la-Fillette? So, Mr. Deputy President, regarding quality of the court, that's important. It's not just about cost and accessibility. The quality of the court, the quality and the speed of the judgments that we have seen over these past few years. Firstly, the issue of immunity from political interference. There's considerable debate within the region over concerns of political interference. We're a small society. We're a highly politicized society. But, Mr. Deputy President, from the financing of the CCJ through to the appointment of the judges, these processes are insulated from political interference. The court is not dependent on member states to provide financial support for its operations. So preference will not be given to those who are current with their dues or those who are withholding dues, who are trying to leverage financial support for the court. That doesn't exist, Mr. Deputy President. The day-to-day operations of the court are financed through a $100 million loan that was provided by the Caribbean Development Bank that the member states have now paid back, but that loan, that $100 million forms part of an endowment that generates an annual income that is sufficient to fund the operations of the court. Secondly, Mr. Deputy President, the appointment of the judges to the CCJ. Up to 9 judges sit on that bench, and appointments are made by the Judicial Legal Services Commission, a politically independent committee that comprises of members of the Regional Bar Association, distinguished jurists, civil society, and public service chairs from some of the member states. So when we compare the financing, we compare the selection of judges to those of the Privy Council, which are determined by the political establishment in the UK, let alone the United States. We all know how politically sensitive, how politically inflammatory selection of judges to the Supreme Court are there. For the CCJ, the selection of the president, the selection of the judges, far removed from that and politically immune. So quality of the judges, the criteria set for the selection of judges is high. They are as highly qualified as any British judge that sits on the Privy Council. Some even better qualified, Mr. Deputy President. The range of experiences include not only domestic matters, but there is a requirement that 3 persons on that bench must have international law and trade law. And this is important within the context of providing confidence, especially for investors who would want to know that if there is a commercial dispute, if there is a legal dispute which involves other territories outside of the region, that those judges have the competence, the experience, the skill set to be able to manage those cases, and they do, Mr. Deputy President. The judges currently serving on the CCJ are highly respected. Existing 6, highly respected by their peers, not only within the Caribbean, but again, internationally. And the judgments that have come out of that court, whether the original or the appellate jurisdiction, have been internationally acclaimed. They're doing good work, Mr. Deputy President. Now moving on to this opportunity to build a mature Caribbean jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is a very fancy name, Mr. Deputy President, for the science behind lawmaking and determines the principles upon which legal rules are developed and used to settle ambiguities that may exist within the law. And at the heart of our jurisprudence here in the Caribbean is our culture, our Caribbean culture, our traditions, who we are, what we are, our values. It's at the heart of it. But, Mr. Deputy President, in many areas, those values, culture, those traditions could not be more different from those that reside in the courts in the British legal system. Our laws must be derived from those traditions, our own traditions, and that culture. So accession to the CCJ as a final court of appeal allows us to start building those legal rules so that we can have laws that are more reflective of our values. I was struck by Prime Minister Motley's presentation when she was here a couple of weeks ago at the Trade Center. And she spoke of her experience as a trainee lawyer in the United Kingdom, where she witnessed a case of a Jamaican woman who was wrongly accused of a criminal offense and convicted. And her observations about the entire court system and legal system, the prejudices, the insensitivities to our cultural nuances, even language, Mr. Deputy President, how so much was misunderstood, misinterpreted, and that resulted in her conviction, which was later overturned. But for Prime Minister Motley, it was an eye-opener as to the need for proper representation and a sensitive and reflective understanding of us as a people. And it was clear that if this matter was heard in a Caribbean court, the outcome, Mr. Deputy President, I'm sure would have been very, very different. Now, Mr. Deputy President, I want to build on this theme of cultural sensitivity, and I want to draw on some of my own experiences, the time I spent in the United Kingdom. And there is a particular case that struck me. It led to some landmark rulings in English law, affected the whole of the United Kingdom. And this is a ruling that came out of a Macpherson report. This is back in 1999, and this was after the murder of a black teenager, Stephen Lawrence, by 5 white boys, and the miscarriages of justice that occurred with this particular case, and the struggle a black family had in seeking justice in modern Britain. The Macpherson report spoke to the lack of justice served to Stephen Lawrence and his family, and concluded that the British judicial system was institutionally racist. I want to make it very clear that and I want to make this clear from the start, that the report did not speak to the Privy Council, but it does set a context for the British legal establishment and what they think of us and how they treat us. So what is institutional racism? It's defined as the collective failure of an organization to provide an appropriate and professional service to people because of their color, culture, or ethnic origin. It can be seen or detected in processes, attitudes, and behavior which amount to discrimination through unwitting prejudice, ignorance, thoughtlessness, and racial stereotyping. Institutional racism is characterized by a systemic form of prejudice, which is particularly evident in the differential treatments that various racial groups receive within a system and the use of judicial procedure in one way or another in which the criminal justice system operates and regards to its process of prosecution, sentencing, and imprisonment. And it goes on to say that there are different effects of race and ethnicity on sentencing outcomes and imprisonment rates. This is pretty serious stuff. Institutional racism and the effect that has on serving honest justice, black people in the United Kingdom. Mr. President, Deputy President, I go on further. I can now speak of my own personal experiences as a Caribbean man living in Britain, and I had the opportunity to serve as a juror in a high court in London. Again, a different part of the British judicial system, but it's still reflective of the attitude of the British legal establishment. My experience, Mr. Deputy President, made me fear the British judicial system, to hear the prejudices, the injustices, the insensitivities, the ignorance, the biases, the treatment of black defendants over white defendants, similar cases, similar circumstances, but interpreted completely differently with different outcomes, whether you were a black defendant or you were a white defendant. And this was from the judges, the barristers, the solicitors, let alone the jurors, of which I was one. It frightened me, Mr. Deputy President. So I have lived there, and I would prefer to be judged here by my own people than over there. So we talk about justice there. I prefer to be judged by my own, Mr. Deputy President. And the final note, along the same lines, I wish to touch on, and it's a treatment of my parents' generation and their experiences in Britain, the Windrush generation, those who immigrated from the Caribbean to Britain, the 1960s, the 1970s. The British government recently classified many of them as undocumented, illegal immigrants. Many of them had worked, lived, worked, struggled, because it's a struggle, Mr. Deputy President, a struggle for 40 or 50 years. Then to be classified as an undocumented immigrant, those that were deported, those who were denied health care, those who were denied access to welfare, their pensions stopped. Mr. Deputy President, this is how the British establishment viewed us as West Indians, living within their society for 40 to 50 years. But it was the intervention of our Caribbean leaders, led by the Prime Minister of Jamaica and Prime Minister Holness, our own Prime Minister, Keith Mitchell, who brought the argument to the doorsteps of the British Prime Minister and put our case forward. And in fairness to the British government, they reversed that decision. But, Mr. Deputy President, it tells us something. It tells us precisely how they view us and what they think of us. So, Mr. President, so who are we here? If that's how they treat those of us who live there for decades, what about us? Do they even know where Grenada is? Let alone understand our traditions and our values. So, Mr. President, I say all of this to say that how we are viewed and treated there, is that what we want? Is that what we say is justice and justice served? Is that where we wish our appeals court to reside? So once again, Mr. Deputy President, I lived there, I felt it. I prefer to be judged by my own people. So the fact, moving on, the fact, if you listen to some of the comments that have come out of the British establishment about their support for us, the Privy Council has indicated time and time again its displeasure in serving us here in the Caribbean, that we're a drain on the British taxpayer, we're a burden on their legal and judicial system. The words have warmed in more recent times, but those are sentiments that have been publicly expressed. So, Mr. Deputy President, if we do not take our destiny in our own hands and determine for ourselves when and how we leave the Privy Council, that decision may be made for us. So finally, Mr. Deputy President, the final point I wish to raise is about our independence. We are now in our 45th year as an independent sovereign nation. We have an independent executive, a cabinet, a policy-making branch of government. We have an independent legislature, right here where we are, a parliament where the views of the people are represented, second branch of government. But what about a third branch of government, the judiciary? Can we say that we're truly an independent sovereign state when we still seek justice, not here in Grenada or here in the Caribbean, but the Privy Council in London? Mr. Deputy President, our seeking to break this remaining vestige of colonialism is not just born out of our own pride and desire for self-worth. It's not just about a quest for self-determination. It is all of that, but planted on firm foundations, built on the quality of the judges who serve on the CCJ, the integrity of the CCJ's judicial systems. And that has been proven over the years, that is free from political interference, and that it is self-financing. Mr. Deputy President, it's all of those things that justify our move from the Privy Council to selecting the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of appeal. Mr. Deputy President, it's for those reasons I commend this bill for its second reading. I thank you.
Senator George.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I'm not sure of the protocol, but through you, Mr. Deputy President, I wish to speak to the students in the visitors gallery very quickly, just to welcome them and to say that I am encouraged by their presence. And I think it's almost prophetic that they're here today, because in doing my research, I landed in a place where I felt I was between the generations to come after me and the generations who have gone before me. So I hope what we say here today will not just be for their education, but also will assist in charting a course that will bring them further along in the journey of independence and self-realization. And so, Mr. President, I rise in support of the bill, and to say quite frankly that as part of my journey, I started out as the proverbial doubting Thomas. I had my concerns, as a number of my colleagues, a number of citizens of this country have had, about the transition, potentially, from the Privy Council to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And I am happy to say that, having done my research, having spoken to a number of colleagues and citizens, and having done my own reflections, I have moved into the light in a manner of speaking. And I propose, Mr. President, to treat the debate as a discussion between citizens of this nation, without reference to sides, as it were, and really as more of a civic issue. And civic in the sense of this being something that deals with the rights and the duties of every citizen of Grenada. Because every citizen of Grenada has a right to participate in the creation of a functioning judicial system that is tailored to suit the needs of us as Grenadians. And I think fundamentally this is what this debate is about. There are persons who have concerns, and correctly so, I believe, about the state of our current judicial system. And the citizen has a right to be concerned if his judgments are delayed. The citizen has a right to be concerned if justice is not dispensed in a timely manner. The citizen has a right to be concerned if he feels that because of our size, undue influence will be brought to bear on decisions made in respect of his matter. And I mention it at this stage because I want to emphasize that in this exercise, we really should not be seen as brushing those concerns aside, because they are real. But we must understand as well that they are only a part of the issue that we face, and a part of the decision that we have to make in deciding whether or not we will accede to the appellate jurisdiction of the Caribbean Court of Justice. So that although they're related, to a certain extent they are exclusive of each other. And in my research, I was humbled in a way to find that these are issues and questions that have troubled and vexed ordinary citizens of this country and intellectuals of not just Grenada, but of the Caribbean as a whole. I came across a report of the Commissioners of Inquiry into Civil and Criminal Justice in the British West Indies, which was commissioned in 1826. And it is a very extensive report. It would have been done, obviously, at a time long before our independence. And amongst other things, what it sought to do was to actually come into the territories, including Grenada, and to interview persons who were impacted by the justice system. And I was reading an account of a slave from one of the plantations in Carriacou who complained about the way he was treated, the lack of meals and so on. And it humbled me because he was not even mentioned by name. He was mentioned as a Negro boy. And I thought to myself that it is time in this year, 2018, that we honestly address our minds to whether or not the time has not now reached for us to embrace the opportunity that we now have to fashion something of our own. And respectfully, Mr. Deputy President, I think it is our obligation, certainly in the Senate, and certainly as citizens, to give this issue our free, our genuine, and our impartial consideration. Because it is no light feat to amend the Constitution. The requirement of a two-thirds majority in relation to the referendum is deliberate, because the thinking is that you don't just jump in today and amend the Constitution and jump in tomorrow and amend it again. So the opportunity to do so must be embraced when we have it. And I go further, Mr. President, to say that those who have gone before us, and I speak to the TMR shows, I speak to the persons in the Trade Unions Council, I speak to the persons who have fought to get us to the point where we're standing today. And I say, Mr. Deputy President, that I think it is the least that they would expect of us at this juncture, that we do what we needed to do to carry forward the work that they have done and that they have paid for in their own blood and in their own sweat and in their own tears. And I want to reference and to mention as well this very old text that was given to me by Mr. Derek Knight, QC, who was my mentor and who I appeared as junior to in matters before the High Court. And these were the sorts of discussions that we would have. And I am grateful to him. Yes, Senator Cox, you can see the vintage of the text. it has seen better days. But it was published in 1966. And what it contains is a sort of series of conversations by Caribbean intellectuals who would have been writing at the time when independence would have been a hot topic Certainly for us, we would not have been independent, but certain of the other territories would already have been there. And it would have been written as well shortly after the failure of the federal court, which was a court which was set up with the intention of unifying the administration of justice in the federal territories. And I want to refer to an article written by a very well-renowned West Indian intellectual. His name is Professor K.W. Pashi. I hope I'm not butchering his surname, but I believe he certainly is very well known. And he spoke, amongst other things, about the concerns that were raised as far back as then about doing away with the Privy Council. And one of those issues that was raised even in 1966, and he wrote this lecture, he said, coming out of consultation with law students in England, was the independence of the judiciary. And he said, and to put it in further context, he was referencing the measures that had been made for removal of judges in the present court system. And he said, however desirable this procedure may seem for ensuring an impartial investigation of allegations against a judge, the ultimate preference for the Privy Council seems inappropriate, certainly for the independent territories, and perhaps even for the remainder. For if higher standards in the judiciary are to be obtained, they should be set and maintained in the territories themselves. Had the Federal Supreme Court continued, having evoked much confidence in a short life, final jurisdiction in these matters might have rested there, even with respect to the federal authority. And there is now no body of like standing for all territories in the area. The ultimate responsibility for these matters might better rest with the final appeal courts of the Caribbean. And he went on to say, and I'm skipping out certain parts for the sake of brevity. Again, it may be asked whether the Judicial Committee should retain this power after independence. For independence bears with it responsibility for one's own development. Although the Judicial Committee represents impartiality and objectivity, many of the constitutional issues turn upon concepts such as equality and reasonableness, which should be applied not abstractly, but by those who are aware of their meaning and effect in a particular society. This is as far back, Mr. Deputy President, as 1966. If the judiciary is to be required to decide these issues, it is as much an instrument for the development of the society as the executive. If the executive is to enjoy independence from the United Kingdom, it is just as important that the judiciary should enjoy it too. And Mr. Deputy President, I could not put it any better.
Senator George, just before you continue, please, just for completeness, could you just say the text, the text that you're quoting from, so the Hansard could completely...
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. And so it is a publication of the British Institute of International and Comparative Law. It is called Law in the West Indies, Some Recent Trends, and I believe it is it is series number 6. Yes. And so, Mr. Deputy President, as I was saying, I could not express it better myself. And I would only want to graft the statements that I have made onto the statements already made by the Honorable Senator Steele, and to say that I think the time has come for us as a people to make that bold move to realize or to embrace our own destiny. I want to end by saying to the persons who have concerns about whether or not we should be making this move while our own internal affairs remain unaddressed, I say to them that in every difficulty is an opportunity to fix the thing and to fashion something that better suits us. And I myself, as part of the committee entrusted with finding solutions in relation to the courthouse and so on, I have found that there is benefit in consensus. There is benefit in meeting and communicating our difficulties and drawing on the experiences of different stakeholders. And I want to encourage that approach as we move forward in dealing with the issues which we have locally, because it is certainly not the intention of this administration, certainly not the intention of the other stakeholders to allow those issues to go unaddressed. It is important that they are raised. It is important that the persons in authority are called on to account, but they must not be the only reason that we rely on to deny ourselves an opportunity to craft and to fashion a final appellate court that will work for us. I thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Lewis, Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. But before I make my contribution, could I just ask you for some guidance? Because I indeed have about 3 or 4 proposed amendments I would like to make, to suggest. 2 at least I consider extremely fundamental, and you will be the judge. In this stage of the debate, should this be when I make it or in the committee stage?
Depending on the nature, you could indicate all here, and
then
when we get to committee, you could pinpoint it.
Okay, thanks very much. But before I reach there, Senator George and Senator Still, I identify with all, most if not all of what you have identified. I would want to boldly say that the time has come, and long overdue, for us in the region to take our own destiny in our hands, and the CCJ is one of it. The issue for me is that I'm feeling rushed. I want to be extremely blunt, straight, Mr. Deputy President. And why am I feeling rushed? Just as Senator George have indicated, that there are a number of concerns outside there, and we need to face it frontally. In other words, we must not view those concerns as opposition, but as genuine concerns, just as so you have reached that journey where most people feel comfortable. And I'm convinced, I do not need to be sold on the CCJ, but I'm not representing myself only. I'm not representing me. I feel very, very rushed. The question is, why the haste? And I feel that haste. I honestly, colleagues, I honestly feel that haste. I don't have an answer, but I feel that haste. And I hear the argument about the local courts, and we can address it as we go forward. And I say yes. But the concern that I have, and a number of us have, is that once we achieve that objective of the CCJ, these matters will be forgotten. These matters will be forgotten. The general public, Senator Steele, through you, Deputy President, and I made a note, the man from the back of Lafayette, yes, is very much more concerned about access to the magistrate level. The bulk of our people, how many cases, right, we would have liked to take to the Privy Council, and we can't. It pales into comparison at the level of the magistrate level.
am for the CCJ. But one has not yet gotten the feel that the powers that be, yes, some attempts have been made, but the genuine efforts or the prioritizing of that issue has reached that level to address the access to the mass of our people. And therefore, we would like to propose that in furtherance of going to the CCJ, and that's why we are saying we feel rushed, it does not have to be voted upon right now. Let us give ourselves a timeline. Let us demonstrate to the mass of our people that we are committing the resources, the necessary resources to addressing the local issues. I'm saying yes to the CCJ, but I'm a negotiator. I'm a trade unionist. And we all know that when promises have been made, that yes, these matters that you raise are important. But if you give us that blight, we will come back and address it. It does not happen. The question would arise, why the rush? Why the haste? Is it that we must do something by a deadline? So, for instance, in our earlier debates in this House and in the other place, because we are under the Structural Adjustment Program and we had to meet certain legislative deadlines, it was said that we had to do certain things by X or Y time, and therefore we all threw our hands up in the air and say, yes, although there are shortcomings, but we have a bigger obligation to meet some international commitments and let us rush along. If we could be told that this must be done before the end of the year, then I would be one of the leading voices that will go out there for the bigger picture and say, let's do it now. We are saying yes, CCJ. Don't get us wrong. And when I go into the amendments that we want to propose, hopefully you would recognize the bigger picture. Colleagues, Mr. Deputy President, just on some minor but related matters. You know, Mr. Deputy President, earlier on in a discussion, what I'll call a sidebar, in which Senator Cox was also involved, and I was told that in the absence of the President and the Deputy President in the chair, if the Deputy Chair has to vacate his seat for a moment, I may be called upon to sit there. And it dawned upon me, and after I see my good colleague, Senator Roberts here, and I'm not sure what she will do, Senator will do, it dawned upon us that we can make a statement from today that we are not wearing a wig. In other words, anti-colonialism. There are small measures that we can take. And so I look at you and I say, yes, Deputy President, I didn't see the wig. I said, that's good. Because one of the hallmarks that we advance, and it's not a major matter, I do not buy the issue of the CCJ significantly on the basis of anti-colonialism. I'm anti-colonialist, I am, but that's not a major matter for me. But I'm saying because it is part of the argument. The SAWS, right? So this and so those of us who leads that needs to be addressed. And there are certain basic steps that we can take. We are trying to convince the man from Lafayette. One of the most serious calypsos that I have heard, very deep, in my view, that advanced the thinking of the general public was Ruthman Kelly about the CCJ. In my view, it's my view, he addressed the issues as advanced by Senator George, the journey that you went through, and we have not addressed them frontally. In my view, and we as leaders must take responsibility, even within the labor movement, because we have to be outside there, either advocating for our gains. Yes, we must be part, and I'm calling on the wider community, the different organizations to be part of that debate. Calling on all of us to be part of that debate. But we must do it on the basis of respect for each other's view and to get us along the line, not by condemning those who say, well, we have concerns. These are valid concerns. I agree that the issue of the treaty obligations, the government of the day has the right to go into treaty obligations. And when you go into treaty obligations, you have to bring it into national laws. I buy all these arguments. However, I don't buy the argument about the cost. And I'll tell you why. If we know we have to go through a constitutional amendment in terms of a referendum, and we go and we spend money, we can't hold people hostage to that. I'm buying the point. I'm buying the point. I'm buying the point of our treaty obligation. Can the government have that right? These are minor points. I want to address the selection of the judges. There's absolutely no doubt. And my dear friend, I guess I can use the word comrade, my dear comrade, Senator Katisha Williams, spoke during the time of the issue with the treaty with China on the question of exchange of persons of interest, and indicating that we are known for making our force Grenada. And therein lies the concerns of some people. Therein lies the concerns of some people that, especially even within the labor movement, because we confront the state from time to time. And history has shown us, in our recent past, over the past 30 years, that it is possible. It is possible. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen in America, it happens in England. Because at the level of the Supreme Court, that is why there's this battle over whether President Trump or Obama or whoever it is, the Democrats or the Republicans, should be the ones nominating the judges, because they are political biases. It happens in England. At the level of the Privy Council, one has seen that different judges, all depends on their political and social background, takes a particular slant. Because law is opinion. Any judge can find some interpretation on what is written to go in a particular direction. And I'm not imputing any ulterior motive here. I'm just saying that this is what law is. And therefore, we want to propose for consideration that in the context of the selection of judges, that serious consideration should be given to the posting of the names of the judges who are nominated, and giving the citizens of the region an opportunity to raise whatever concerns they may have. Yes? In other words, you go through whatever system there is. It may not be part of this document here in terms of our constitution, but I'm speaking about selection of the judges because it leads to the amendments. And we can develop a process by which those objections can be submitted. I would now want to turn my attention to the proposed amendments itself. If I may, just raise. I will start with what one will consider the most, my view, fundamental issue. Just bear with me. It is right here. On the question of, let me just. The question of amending Section 104. If we were to turn to Section 104, if I could just Section 104. If we go to Section 104, of the Constitution. Yes, they have Section 104, Item 6. My brother, like you have divine, you know this. We're getting there. As it relates to Section 37.7 in the Constitution, section 104, that's page 83. I have a constitution that's very much beaten up, eh? Huh? No, but I'm using 99. It will be 99 in the modern looking one. Yeah, this one has gone through a lot of blows. Yes? Yes? But for me, it's here. And it says here, subject to the provision of section 37.7 of this Constitution. So let us now go to section 37 of the Constitution. You'll have to tell me what is the page number in the 49, section 49 for those who have, yeah, page 49. And in my piece here, it is page 40. It says here, 37.7 says, no appeal shall lie from any decision of the Court of Appeal in exercise of the jurisdiction conferred by subsection 6 of this section, and no appeal shall lie from any decision of the High Court in proceedings under this section, other than a final decision determines such a question as it relates to in subsection 1 of this section. So let us go to subsection 6. It says, no appeal shall lie from any, no appeal shall lie, subsection of this, an appeal shall lie right to the Court of Appeal from any. It says, an appeal shall lie as a right to the Court of Appeal from any final decision of the High Court determining such a question as is referred to in subsection 1. Subsection 1 addresses the composition of Parliament, the results of the election. Yes? So let us go to subsection 1. Let us go to subsection 1. Subsection 1 says, and the side note is determination of questions as to membership of Parliament. 37.1, the High Court shall have jurisdiction to hear and determine any question whether, and probably it's not necessary to read everything. This is the composition of membership of Parliament. This matter, under our present Constitution, and I agree with it, prevents any of this matter, any question concerning Parliament, from being addressed by the Privy Council. I totally agree. But in our amendment, we are saying, which I totally agree, that this is our Caribbean court. This is our Grenadian court, the CCJ. Why? We are proposing that you give the CCJ, in other words, let us put our money where our mouth is. Let us put our money where our mouth is. The amendment that we propose, because the CCJ is replacing the Privy Council, it still contains, the CCJ will now have the powers that the Privy Council had. Am I correct? And because the CCJ will have the powers that the Privy Council had, unless you give the CCJ the powers that the Privy Council didn't have, it therefore means that the CCJ will not have jurisdiction over the issue relating to Parliament. If we accept that the CCJ is a reflection of breaking that final yoke of colonialism, which I agree with, as one of them, it's not the only one. We must put our money where our mouth is and demonstrate to the people of this Caribbean region, demonstrate to our ordinary people that our parliamentarians are prepared, and we in these houses are prepared to subject ourselves to the CCJ. I want to go back to it. 37.1. Let us link it. 37.1 speaks about the determination of questions as a membership of Parliament. And let us go to 37.7. It says, no appeal shall lie from any decision of the Court of Appeal. In other words, the Court of Appeal have jurisdiction in relation to 37.1. Yes? That's my understanding. It says here, no appeal shall lie from any decision of the Court of Appeal in exercise of the jurisdiction conferred by subsection 6 of this section. And subsection 6 says, an appeal shall lie as of right to the Court of Appeal from any final decision of the High Court determining such a question as is referred to in subsection 1 of this section. So the Court of Appeal shall have the right to hear matters coming out of the High Court in relation to subsection 1. But our existing constitution says, that no appeal shall lie from any decision of the Court of Appeal in exercise of the jurisdiction conferred by subsection 6 of this section, and no appeal shall lie from any decision of the High Court in proceedings under this section other than from a final decision determining such a question as referred to in subsection 1 of this section. My understanding and our understanding is that, as it stands currently, subsection 1, which deals with the determination of the question as to membership of Parliament, can be heard up to the level of the appeal court in our current system. Whatever the appeal court says shall be final and binding. You can't go to the Privy Council. I could understand it. Let's rest with that. But we are now taking our destiny into our own hands. I have absolutely no quarrel. I agree and I'll advocate that we have some of the best minds in the region. I'm not worried about the composition of the CCJ. Absolutely confident that we have the right minds. We have world-class minds. We want our people to believe in the CCJ. We must lead that call and subject the composition of Parliament to the CCJ. Can't be two standards. Cannot be two standards. And I'm hoping that it is an oversight. I'm accepting that it is an oversight. That for us will determine our support for the CCJ. Not for the CCJ, but at this stage. In other words, colleagues, we say yes to CCJ, but there are certain issues. And I say there are some that are more weightier than others. Yes, there are others that I will raise. There were 3 or 4 others that I will raise. But this here is one of the most fundamental issues. Even if you want to address speed, we have them, as a matter of fact, one of the launch pad for the argument for going to the CCJ is that it's faster. The example in Barbados was used. The reason why I could understand this, not going to the Privy Council, is a question of you don't want to have a government in flux. All it happens in places like Australia and Israel and those places, and Germany, when you can't find coalition partners, right? So now the government is in flux for a long time. But that's why I understand and I accept it. Yes? I would like to hear, we'd like to propose this as a fundamental amendment. And the administration can demonstrate, if they agree with the observation that we have made, that this is not about rush, and this is fundamental enough to entertain that amendment. Yes? We can go, I'll develop it further if there need be when we go in committee stage. But that for us, colleagues, that for us, in other words, give the CCJ jurisdiction
over all the matters. The courts, as been said, is the final bastion of a defense of democracy and human rights and whatever. Yes, if this be the case, as we are tempted to accept, give me ammunition so I can go to my thousands of members that we represent. I say, look, the politicians, the parliamentarians have demonstrated their belief in the CCJ. Powers that we did not give the Privy Council. We are so confident of our CCJ that we are not conferring that to the CCJ. Give me added ammunition. I want the CCJ, colleagues. But I don't want it at any cost and every cost. I want it because it is part of our destiny that we need to take into our hands. It is part of the destiny that we need to take into our hands. And therefore, we need to demonstrate. We need to demonstrate that to our people. I agree. We ain't giving no Privy Council control over our parliament. But I'm calling for CCJ to have it, our Caribbean Court of Justice. As we march on to one Caribbean people, as we march on to demonstrating the confidence that we have in our regional and local institutions, that will be a significant demonstration of where we want to go. And therefore, Grenada can demonstrate to the region our leadership role. Point made by my dear Senator Katisha Williams, but Grenada known to making us first, can demonstrate to the rest of the region and the world that at the level of the Senate, we saw an oversight. And despite the fact that in the other place, we are prepared. If it's worth it, and we genuinely believe that it's worth it, and I think that if what I'm saying is correct, and I verily believe what I'm saying is correct, my observation and interpretation of that oversight, we can demonstrate to everyone our belief in the CCJ, and not just belief, but that if we get it wrong, we are prepared to go back and get it right. And therefore, at the same time, institute the education aspect. The TUC wants to play a leading role in this matter. But we want to do it on the basis of these amendments, and we want to do it on the basis of further engagement, because the last referendum, there's no doubt that the last referendum was tainted by party politics. We don't want that. We want this referendum to be done on the basis of education, and therefore we want more engagement. We want more engagement. We want more engagement so we can go to our members. So much so I can let this House know that a letter will be going very soon to the advisory committee, because the TUC is part of the committee here. The TUC is part of the committee, where we want an engagement with our leadership. That is the TUC Management Committee and the executive of all the other unions, where we can sit and discuss. Yes, because we want to be on board. As a matter of fact, we are on board with the discussion. The General Secretary of the Trades Union Council, Comrade Bert Patterson, is our representative on the committee. So we are not here fighting against the CCJ. We are not. We want the CCJ. We want it. But we are saying, where we observe that there are challenges, where we observe, as a matter of fact, especially where the referendum is not yet held, let us, when we observe where there are weaknesses, because in two or so of the other issues I want to address is a matter of clarity. I'm seeking matters of clarity. And if we agree that there are ways that we can reduce the ambiguity of those, let's address them. So I would not want to head on to the others. But that for us is the most fundamental issue here. So on this basis, I will now head on to the others. Guess as a means of pause, even this thing normally closed down.
I don't always need it, but just in terms of the records. If we go now to, and they're all around the same area. Let's go now to, my apologies for this, but that's what, because I have the whole document in front of me. Yes, if we go now to Appeals to the Caribbean Court of Justice, that's section 1041. I'm dealing now with the amendments. In the existing Constitution, 1041 says an appeal, 1041A, final decisions in any civil, I'm dealing with the amendments now, the amendments. That's 1041 in the amendments, yes. That'd be page 9. Yeah, page 9. Huh? Amendment page 9. Yes, 1041, 104, section 1A, subsection 1, both Roman numeral 1 and 2. It speaks here, the matter in dispute on appeal to the court is of the prescribed value or upwards. Both of them address that. So if we go down now to, let's see what the prescribed value is. Prescribed value is, yes, 1041, Roman numeral.
But they are subject to the provisions of section 37.
No.
1041.
Yeah, but I'm addressing, that's in the, huh? No, page 9. Yes, no, I was just, sorry. Yes. The prescribed value in our existing Constitution, and as repeated, yes, $1,500, subsection 5. It says in this section, the prescribed value means the value of $1,500 or such other value as may be prescribed by the Parliament. Here I will need the assistance because I do not have the agreement with me. That's the treaty, the agreement. I researched it. My apologies, I do not have it here. But in the agreement, it speaks about prescribed value. The agreement is
Notice of section 1.
Test, test, test.
pleasant good morning to the entire trial state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and of course those of you in the wider diaspora. Pleasant good day to you. It's a wonderful Friday morning in the Spice Isle of Grenada, and of course we just want to say a warm welcome to the final edition of Spice Morning for this week. Today, the 14th day of September 2018. It's a pleasure to be alive this morning. It's the most gracious honor to be alive and be spared the gift of life once again by the Most High. We want to say thanks to Almighty God for taking us through yet another day. Many of us may not have made it, but who knows what? That's part of life. Folks, just before we start our day, we just want to ensure that we reverence Almighty God. And in doing so here on Spice Morning, we always start the day off by invoking God's presence as we bring to you the Bible quote for today, September 14th, 2018. This morning's Bible quote is coming from Joshua 1, verse 9. Just to remind you, this morning's Bible quote comes to you from Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, and it says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you forever, wherever you go." Just to repeat the Bible quote for today, Joshua 1, verse 9. "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." And that's a blessed assurance that we have in Almighty God. That blessed assurance that He will always be with us, even until the end of time. And that's an eternal promise. He never goes back on His word. So this morning we just want to say thank you to Almighty God for sparing our lives to see yet another day. So whatever you do today, ensure that you ask God's guidance. Ensure that you put God first in whatever you do. Remember Proverbs 3 verse 5 says, "In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct our every path." Trust in Him with all thine ways. Trust in Him. And in Joshua 1 verse 9, you can see where He clearly says, He reminds us of that command, that commandment. He commanded us that we must be strong and courageous in spite of. Do not be afraid. When you have God in you, there is no fear. When you put God first and foremost in everything that you do, when you know the true God that we serve, and you've experienced His goodness, His mercifulness, and His faithfulness towards us, there is nothing to be afraid of. And do not be discouraged. So folks, as we delve into the rest of the program, I'm just going to give you a brief rundown as to what's going to be happening on Spice Morning for today, the 14th day of September. And I'm certain a lot of you are happy today. It's Friday. It's the cool down day of the week. So this morning we're going to be bringing to you a recap of the national report. So you're going to be looking out for that, just reminding you of what happened on the national level, what government is doing throughout our trial and state here in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, projects, programs, developments, and more developments. So we're going to be recapping those for you as they were featured yesterday in the national report. Then we're going to delve into the M&IB basket. That's where we are going to be bringing to you some health tip, or maybe we'll just give you a recipe today since it's Friday so that you can make something nice and spicy on the weekend. Later on, we have your birthday and anniversary segment. That's your celebration corner. We have some shout outs this morning going out to some very special persons, and that moment is going to be coming up shortly. Then later on, we're going to give you some highlights and some updates as to what the weather forecast is going to be looking for today and tonight. We have some special guests in studio this morning. They are going to be sharing with us. They're from the CCJ Advisory Committee, and we know that's the trending topic here in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique right now as Grenada get ready to accede to the CCJ as its final court of appeal. So we're going to be talking lots more about the CCJ coming up. So right now we take a short break, and when we come back, we bring you the national report from last evening.
A little rainfall and you come home and your house gone. Gone. I never thought this would happen to me.
Told them it could happen, but they never paid me no mind. Never.